The war between Ukraine and Russia is one of the most significant geopolitical crises of the 21st century. It has shaken Europe and reverberated across the globe, redrawing the alliances and testing the resolve of nations. But how did we get here? We must delve into the past and examine the complex history, politics, and the decisions that has led to this moment. The roots of Ukraine-Russia conflict trace back centuries. Ukraine, strategically located between Europe and Russia, has long been the land of contention. Throughout the history, it has been ruled by various empires, including the Polish and Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire. In the 20th century, Ukraine became the part of Soviet Union. However, the relations between Ukraine and Moscow were often fraught with tension. One of the darkest chapters occurred in 1930s with the Holodomor, a man-made famine orchestrated by Stalin that killed millions of Ukrainians. Despite the painful history, Ukraine remained under Soviet control until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Ukraine declared its independence, but even after gaining sovereignty, the country was still entangled in the Moscow's sphere of influence. In the years following the independence, Ukraine struggled with internal divisions, economic challenges, and political instability. A key point of contention was whether Ukraine would orient itself towards Russia or integrate with Western Europe. Tension between pro-Western and pro-Russian factions within Ukraine grew. The division was made clear in 2004 during the Orange Revolution, where the Ukrainians took to the streets to protest the election fraud and demand a more democratic, European-aligned government. The pivotal moment came in 2014 with the Euromaidan protests. Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych's decision to abandon the deal from European Union in favor of closer ties with Russia sparked massive protest. The demonstrations ultimately led to his ousting and Ukraine's pivot towards Europe. This political shift was seen as a direct threat by the Kremlin. In response to the Ukraine's Western aspirations, Russia, under President Vladimir Putin, took swift and decisive action. In March 2014, Russia forces annexed Crimea, a peninsula with strategic importance and a significant Russian-speaking population. The annexation was condemned internationally, but was framed by Moscow as a defensive move to protect ethnic Russians and secure its Black Sea naval base in Sevastopol. The annexation of Crimea was followed by unrest in Ukraine's eastern region, where Ukraine-backed separatists declared independence in Donetsk and Luhansk region. What began as a political crisis soon devolved into a full-scale war. Ukraine, now facing separatist insurgencies supported by Russian military and financial aid, struggled to regain control. Despite the ceasefire agreements like the Minsk Accord, violence continued, claiming over 13,000 lives by 2021. On February 24, 2022, the situation escalated dramatically when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In a televised address, President Putin claimed the invasion was necessary to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine, accusing the West of using Ukraine as a pawn against Russia. Russian forces quickly advanced on multiple fronts, targeting major cities like Kiev, Kharkiv, and Mariupol. Despite overwhelming odds, the Ukrainian military, bolstered by the civilian volunteers and foreign support, put a fierce resistance. The invasion prompted a swift and unprecedented response from the international community. Western nations imposed harsh economic sanctions on Russia, targeting its banking system, energy exports, and oligarchs. NATO increased its military presence in Eastern Europe, though direct involvement was avoided to prevent further escalations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky became a symbol of resilience, rallying his people and addressing the world in an emotional plea for support. The war has taken a devastating toll on civilian population. Millions of Ukrainians have been displaced, either fleeing to neighboring countries or becoming internally displaced within Ukraine. Cities like Mariupol have been reduced to rubbles, while hospitals, schools, and homes have been targets in this brutal conflict. Reports of war crimes, including targeting of civilians, mass graves, and indiscriminate bombing, has been drawn international outrage and calling for accountability. As of current, the war has continued with no end in sight. Ukraine forces, with significant military aid from Western nations, have managed to halt Russian advance in many areas. However, Russia retains control of key territories in the east and south. Peace talks have occurred sporadically, but both sides remain entrenched in their position, with Russia demanding the recognition of its annexation and Ukraine insisting on its full sovereignty over its territory. The war has also reshaped global geopolitics, particularly in Europe. It has caused a significant energy crisis as Europe has sought to wean itself off Russian gas. Food prices have also soared globally due to disruption in Ukrainian grain exports, has expanded its presence, with Finland and Sweden now seeking membership, while countries like China and India have carefully balanced their relationship with both Russia and the West. The Ukraine-Russia war has evolved into a prolonged and grinding conflict, with no clear resolution in sight. What began as a swift invasion has turned into a war of attrition, reshaping Ukraine, Russia, and the global order. As the world watches, the outcome of this war will not only determine the future of Ukraine and Russia, but also shape the trajectory of global politics for decades to come. This war is not just about land, borders, or political alignments. It's about the survival of a nation, the fight for sovereignty, and the future of democracy in a world increasingly defined by power struggles and shifting alliances.